Welcome back to Build and Tinker. This week I'm going to talk about building Gisa and Geralf for our most recent episode of the podcast. Gisa and Geralf is a 4/4 human wizard for 2 blue and a black. When Gisa and Geralf enters the battlefield, put the top 4 cards of your library into your graveyard. During each of your turns, you may cast a zombie creature card from your graveyard. So the goal here is to get zombies into our graveyard one way or the other, either by drawing them or placing them in there, or they die, and then we pull them back out. Just kind of once per turn, getting one out and casting it and trying to get some value from that. Lots of zombies, not really looking for tokens here, given that the tokens will not go into the graveyard. So we really want to kind of try to figure out how to get zombies into the graveyard and then get them back out again. So I have a series of cards here, kind of grouped by card type. If you've seen my other videos, you know this is how I like to build decks. I kind of set aside a number of cards, and then at that point, I will go through and piece them together. I typically do that live over Twitch. We just did that the other day. So right now, we're going to focus on covering the different cards and kind of actually what made it into the 99 of the deck. We'll not be talking about lands too much. Got a couple of lands over here in this pile, but right now, just going to focus on some of the key synergies we want. So I think we're going to start with everybody's favorite ramp. That's what this pile is. We have 7 sources of ramp. We have your basic signets, lockets, keystone, commander sphere, soul ring. But black market is also a great one for zombies because they are going to die. You want them to die to get in the graveyard, which means you're going to be blocking, attacking, those type of things, and get other creatures into the graveyard. So black market is great anytime you expect creatures to die quite a bit in your deck. The rest here are your basic Dimir ramp that you would have in Artifact. So nothing terribly exciting there. I think black market's a fairly expensive card, but at least it does should do some pretty good work in this deck. The next one is removal. So I broke this into 2 categories. We have a handful of board wipes. So Damnation, obviously kind of the ultimate black board wipe here. But also Necromantic Selection. Not only can you get creatures into the graveyard, but you can return one to the battlefield, and it is a zombie itself. So that's going to give you some synergies there. And then Crippling Fear is a fun one. You get to choose a creature type, so you choose zombies. Everything else is -3/-3 until end of turn, which gets you some value there and saves your zombies. The other removal is your basic black removal here. The idea being just we need some removals. A big synergy here would be Price of Fame. Not only do you get to destroy your target creature, it costs 2 less if you target a legendary creature, so good for commanders, but Surveil 2. So Surveil lets you look at the top 2 cards of your library and then put any number of them into your graveyard or back on top of the library. So it lets you kind of pick and choose what zombies go into the graveyard without necessarily having to find some card draw. So your graveyard becomes an extension of your hand in a deck like this. The last one is, of course, the Planeswalker in the deck, Liliana, Waker of the Dead. Not the zombie creator, but each player discards a card, and then each person who can't loses 3 life. So it lets you put stuff into the graveyard, as well as gives you some creature removal, and that's really what we're using it for here, is to focus on the creature removal. All right, the next set, we'll kind of stick with some of the basics here. Counterspells. Given that we're in blue, we're going to want to keep our stuff safe. So a number of counterspells here. A couple of them of note. Crush Descent lets you amass 2. That gets you basically a zombie army with a +2/+2 counters on it. If you already have one, you just keep adding counters to it. So you'll see amass a few other times in this deck. Another Surveil counterspell here. Again, counter something, maybe get something into your graveyard, maybe not. A couple of card draws, kind of double duty here to get you some card draws. And then just a couple of value cards here with Disallow and Silumgar's Command. Not only can you return a creature to your hand, you can destroy a creature, remove a creature, and choose 2. So some decent value there. I'll add in that Drown in the Lock is pretty good because you get to do it based on the controller's graveyard. Ideally, if you're destroying stuff and killing stuff on your zombies, you're killing stuff with theirs too. So you can counter either counter a spell or destroy a creature. So it kind of pulls a little bit of double duty there as well. All right, let's see. What do we have? With graveyard mechanics, we want to be able to get things out of the graveyard. Yes, the commander will do that for us. But if the commander is not on the board or can't stick, we still want to be able to get stuff out of the graveyard. So we have your Dread Return, Stitch Together, Phyrexian Reclamation, Resourceful Return, Palace Siege. Again, with Palace Siege, you would choose cons. So beginning of your upkeep, return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. That just kind of puts it back in your hand. And then Inscription of Ruin, multitasking here. If you only have 3 mana, you can at least get something 2 or less from the graveyard to the battlefield. You're seeing the creatures. Zombies tend to be a little bit on the cheaper side. But you can also kick it, and if you kick it, you can destroy stuff, discard stuff, get some other value out of it. So nothing terribly exciting here, but a few pieces that you can kind of replay. And I like Phyrexian Reclamation also because you can kind of just keep doing it. So pay 1 in a black and 2 life, return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 sources of additional graveyard recursion. That's kind of probably just enough given that it's on your commander. But if it gets to the 3rd or 4th time casting your commander, you're going to be up to 8 to 10 mana. That's not going to be feasible. All right, I think we have the 2 big stacks left. We'll cover zombies last because obviously a zombie deck, we want to see the zombies. So first, we'll cover the card draw. So the idea here is that you don't want your card draw to be just normal draw cards. You want to get some other value for it with the synergy of the commander. So Secret to the Dead, when you cast a spell from your graveyard, draw a card. Boom, right? Commander does what it wants to do. You're getting a card draw there. We have a couple here that are very similar. So I'm just going to kind of lay them out here for everybody to see. We'll keep these 2 off on the side here. But anything like Fact or Fiction, Ransack the Lab, Strategic Planning, look at some cards, put 1 in your hand, the rest in your graveyard. We got 3 of those here. Fact or Fiction is pretty good because you're letting your opponent choose. They either give it to your hand or the graveyard. You really don't care where they put it because either way you can cast it. So that's some value there. Notion Rain, again, another Surveil. First you get to Surveil 2, then draw 2 cards. So you want those 2 lands, get them in your hand. You see 2 creatures, get them in the graveyard, and then get 2 in your hand. It will deal 2 damage to you, but not really a big deal. Sift, draw 3 cards, discard a card, Village Rites, sack a creature, draw 2 cards. Second a creature, not a big deal, just recast them. And then Commence the Endgame, another amass here. So Commence the Endgame is a little bit expensive. I'll put it down here after I pick up these other cards. So it's 4 blue and a blue for an instant. It can't be countered, which is nice. You're going to draw 2 cards. Sorry, my dogs are barking there. You're going to draw 2 cards and then amass X, where X is the number of cards in your hand. So the nice thing there is that you can draw some cards, get a zombie on board, and the zombie will be big. If you've already amassed a few times, you're going to have an even bigger zombie, which is really nice. And again, just having zombies on the board is useful. 2 other cards that I have for card draw. Ashiok, Sculptor of Fears. So it's up of +2. You get to draw a card, and then each player puts the top 2 cards of the library into the graveyard. So yeah, you're milling everybody. Probably not a big deal because you're getting cards in the graveyard. But it's also kind of pulling double duty with the -5 because you get to put a target creature card from the graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. So that's any graveyard. Ideally, you're targeting yours. But if for some reason you want to, go ahead and take somebody else's stuff. And then Monastery Siege here. Again, another one of these Cons Dragons cards. For this one, you would obviously pick cons at the beginning of your draw step, draw an additional card, then discard a card. You're getting 2 cards and getting something in your graveyard, which is effectively your hand as well with your commander out. So some very good value there with those cards. Obviously, graveyard mechanics are not new, but there is some value to be had, which is kind of fun and some fun shenanigans to be played with. So zombies. We have a nice range of zombies here. Every creature in the deck is a zombie outside of the commander. Obviously, that is intentional, so you can recast them if you need to. So because we did select, there are a lot of zombies in Magic. This is really what I had on hand for blue and black. So what we'll do is we'll go through and talk about each one kind of one at a time here. Won't take too long. I'm thinking should be pretty quick kind of overview. Liliana Standard Bearer. So a flash. It starts 2 in a black flash. When Liliana Standard Bearer enters the graveyard, draw X card where X is the number of creatures that died under your control this turn. 1, the flash is nice because you can cast it whenever. With your commander on the field, you can cast it from the graveyard. If it's in your hand, that's even better because Gisa and Geralf do not allow you to cast on other players' turns. So it's going to be on your turn. But you know, a couple zombies get killed or somehow you put them in the graveyard, you can flash this out. Or if you have in your hand, somebody board wipes, bam, you can get cards back. Laboratory Drudge, I really like this one in this deck. So at the beginning of each end step, draw a card if you cast a spell from a graveyard or activate an ability of a card in a graveyard this turn. So you cast him for 4 off of Gisa and Geralf. You're going to draw a card at your end step because you cast him from the graveyard, which is nice. And if he's on the field, every time you activate Gisa and Geralf to get their zombies out of the graveyard, you're going to be drawing a card. So again, double duty here. Laboratory Brute. When an ETB is top 4 cards of your library going to your graveyard, again, a little bit of synergy there. Kind of keep bringing them out, getting 4 more cards in, getting them out, 4 more cards in. That's really just to kind of mine a little bit. This deck isn't really designed to mill yourself. You're going to want to just get enough cards in the graveyard to get some synergies there. So not really too worried about it because you're doing 4 cards at a time, 2 cards, 1 card. You're not doing mass mill. If the game drags on, you may need to watch out for that, but it's probably not a win con in this deck. Midnight Reaper, when a non-token creature you control dies, it deals 1 damage to you, draw a card. Again, double duty, Zombie Knight. This is just a good play it, before you go into attacks. When a card dies, you can deal 1 damage to yourself, but you get to draw a card. Mire Triton, Death Touch, and when it ETBs, you put 2 cards in your graveyard, gain a life. Again, 2 CMC, zombie, just kind of good and easy to cast. That's the other piece. You don't want to spend all your mana just casting a single zombie. You want to kind of get a few for your buck here. Murderous Rider. This is a great one because you can send him on an adventure and then he can go into the graveyard. And the trick here is when he dies, he's going to go into the library, but you're probably going to put him in the graveyard some other way. And honestly, if he's dying going to the graveyard, he's probably already done work. So not really too big of a deal. But a 2/3 lifelinker for 3. And the bigger thing is he, again, double duty as a destroy target creature. You lose 2 life. So a lot of synergy here. Similar to Lord of the Accursed, it's just a zombie anthem. And all zombies gain mana to your end of turn. Get this guy on the board, a couple of zombies, you're kind of good to go. Eternal of Harsh Truths. So Afflict 2. So this was a fun one. Whenever this creature becomes blocked, defending player is going to lose 2 life. When he attacks and isn't blocked, you draw a card. So they need to choose between losing 2 life because they blocked or letting you draw a card. Either way, you're kind of coming out ahead. So that's kind of some fun synergy there. Loyal Subordinate. This was the C18 Loyal Lieutenant cycle that they had in the commander sets. So Menace, already kind of like it there. But at the beginning of combat on your turn, if you control your commander, each opponent loses 3 life. So you have him out with Gisa and Geralf, and you just deal 3 damage to everybody. If he's not out in your graveyard, cast him, then you're dealing 3 damage to everybody. So not too bad for 3. Basically 3 mana, deal 3 damage to each opponent, and you have a Menace on board, and if he sticks around, he's going to do it every turn. And if he doesn't stick around, as long as he's not exiled, you just keep doing it. So, if you just keep casting him every turn, I would say 9 damage a turn to the table is pretty good. Aven Eternal, another amass here. Not exciting, but it is a flying zombie and gives you another zombie. So double duty here for 3 mana. Pretty good. Phylactery Lich. This was an interesting one. Kind of went back and forth on this because when he comes out, you have to put a phylactery counter on an artifact. And when you have no more phylactery counters, you sacrifice him. But he is a 5/5 indestructible zombie for 3. Even if he ends up in your graveyard, then you can just recast him once you have an artifact out. And we saw there's a handful of artifacts here that you can kind of get on the board. Eternal Skylord, another amass, but the kicker here is zombie tokens you control have flying. So your own zombie army there is going to be a flyer, and you can kind of keep recreating it if he's on the board. And if he's not, when you bring him on for 5, you're going to get a 2/2 flyer plus a 3/3 blocker. Loliath Giant Undergrowth, when it enters the battlefield, deals 1 damage to the target opponent for each creature card in your graveyard. This could be a win con. It is expensive at 7, but as I was saying earlier, if you're milling yourself and getting kind of to that point, bam, play him out. You can get 10 damage to target opponent if you have 10 creatures in your graveyard. If you're up to 15, get him out there. Even if you sack him or he gets back in the graveyard, you cast him again next turn for 7. You can kind of see where that's going. Pontiff of Blight. So 2/7, 6 mana, so pretty expensive, but extort and other creatures you have extort. So whenever you cast a spell, especially because you're going to be casting from your graveyard, if you are out of cards in your hand, cast a single zombie, pay 2 mana, you're going to deal 2 damage to each person on the table, and gain, upwards of 6 life, 9 life. It kind of just keeps going up from there. So a little bit of a fun zombie there. Phyrexian Delver, return target creature card from your graveyard, you lose life equal to the mana cost. So double duty here, gets in the graveyard, play a zombie, get a zombie. Narfi, Betrayer King. I do have all snowlands in here, so this will be playable. But again, another zombie anthem. But the nice thing here is he can recur himself for 3 snowlands. So all you really have to do is put all the snow islands and snow swamps, and you're kind of covered on that front. No real disadvantage to playing that card other than needing to have the snowlands. Another basic zombie here, just kind of a cheap zombie, 2/1/2, but you get a second 1/1 zombie. That kind of mass. Graveyard Marshal, 2 and a black, exile a card from a graveyard, create a zombie. So this is probably the only zombie token generator I believe I have in here. But again, late game, kind of just get some zombies on the board to do stuff with. Gravecrawler, another zombie that you can cast from your graveyard. He only costs 1, which is really nice. He can't block, which is fine, but you can at least cast him and get some of that synergy there. Again, get the extort synergy. If he's in the graveyard, get some other value there too. Rank Officer, when he enters, you discard a card, create a 2/2 black zombie creature token. Again, that synergy there. You're going to get him on the field, get a zombie into the graveyard, and then possibly cast a zombie you discarded, or if you just need to get something into the graveyard, you can do that. And then exile card from your graveyard. Each opponent loses 2 life. Not really too interested in that, but could come in value. Tormod the Desecrator. When 1 or more cards leave your graveyard, create a 2/2 zap, 2/2 black zombie creature token that is tapped. Again, thought about this being the commander. I figured Geralf is probably just a better commander because he can get things out of the graveyard. So if you have this on board, just value there. Josu Vess. Get him out early for 4 mana. You have a 4 mana, 4/5 menace. And then get him out late game with a kicker, and suddenly you have 8 2/2 zombies. Double duty. Kind of nice late game. And then, of course, the zombie god himself, God Eternal Kefnet. Get him out. You can look at your card, instants or sorceries. We saw that there's several of those, whether they're counterspells, card draw, card recursion to your hand, to the battlefield. You copy that card, get it into your hand, and then you can basically just keep that going. Plus, you have a 4/5 zombie. He never gets into your graveyard on his own. So if he dies, he's always going back to the top 2. If he dies or in exile. But if you put him in the graveyard, obviously you cast him with the commander. So that's pretty much it. Outside of the 2 lands, Agadeem's Awakening, an expensive land. I consider these tap lands, the modal dual face cards to be a land card. So this is taking up a land spot in the deck, but you can imagine getting this thing out for 6 or 7 mana. You're bringing all your 4 CMC less zombies back out. And then Greer Reach Sanitarium, 2, tap it. Each player draws a card, then discards a card. Again, you don't really care about the discarding. You just like to be able to see cards and then put something in your graveyard. So that's the deck. That comes out to a whopping 100 cards when you add in 37 lands, 35 after these 2. Pretty straightforward. Gonna get it on the table, see how it plays. If you want to follow us, give us a follow here on YouTube. Follow us at MTG Build Tinker on Twitter. Follow us on Twitch at MTG Build and Tinker. And obviously the podcast is where we'll be talking about this deck itself, as well as the other decks we have and how these decks played, and possibly some graveyard synergies and mechanics. All right, thanks for listening, and see you guys next time.